Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Mental Health Podcast. And today we want to talk about holidays. Do the holidays stress you out? Do family events stress you out? Because they sure as hell do me. Um, it's a very stressful time. We're piggying back off of the Easter holiday, so it's kind of fresh on everyone's mind. And that's why this topic is so important to me and why I want to get it in here while we're all fresh, still thinking about it, because we're going to have some other holidays coming up, probably some summer birthdays, 4th of July, Memorial Day, and ideally, we'd like to figure some of this out and perhaps gain some tools and a female perspective on, you know, what their thoughts are and what they're going through during this time. Um, and not just think about ourselves, but to also think about how we can support our wives or our loved ones, our significant others, whatever that may be, your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend. But, ideally, we want to have some tools and we want to be able to openly discuss some of the some of the pitfalls and different things that cause us this anxiety. I have anxiety just thinking about it right now. Just speaking, I have anxiety thinking about the holidays because they can be hit or miss. But we're going to get into a discussion here. And for this discussion, I brought in a very special guest. It is Amber McCrea, our therapeutic nutritionist from the Podcast Connection Network. And I did this because she's going to tell you she has a little bit of a focal point in this with some therapy she does. But also, you know, I don't want to speak to my wife, other people's wives, or the female population in general from my point of view and kind of leave the other point of view out because the idea is to come together and make it an enjoyable experience, regardless of the holiday or family event, and love and support one another. So I'm going to let Amber introduce herself and then we're going to kick off this discussion.
Thank you, Richard. I appreciate you. And I am Amber McCrea, therapeutic nutritionist from Connection Over Perfection podcast, where I help women learn how to connect after trauma. And the way that I do that is through holistic nutrition and emotionally focused therapy, plus a bunch of other awesome spiritual hippie shit and just real authentic talk.
Awesome. So, all right.
Well, before we jump in,
Yeah.
I just want to slow you down because as the intro you were talking that this anxiety is coming up for you already. Let's talk about that a little bit. What happened for you?
Well, you know, this past Easter, most holidays I am not a fan of because there's a huge expectation surrounding holidays, family gatherings, all the people you need to visit, the dinners, and this and that, the other. And, my past, I've worked, I was in the military, I've worked in a lot of kitchens, and I worked in emergency rooms and hospital environments. And oftentimes you're working holidays. So I didn't necessarily attend a lot of events in terms of, family holidays and whatnot. Most of the time I was working. So my perspective a little bit is that, you know, the meaning of the holiday is the meaning of the holiday. But when you talk about spending it with people, be it your family or your coworkers, to me, it's always been about the people I'm around at that time and just trying to enjoy good company. Food is good. If the food is there, that's okay, but it's not necessary. I can remember in the military one time, three of us guys eating banquet turkey dinners and a 12-pack of Ice House beer, and we were perfectly fine and happy and content. And a lot of that has to do with, because for me, it's always been about the people. And so the anxiety for me comes from, you know, going out of town, going to an event that's going to be at an in-law's house or something. And, there's so many expectations in terms of, there's going to be food, there's going to be presents, there's going to be these people, you need to dress a certain way because we're going to be taking pictures. And um, that creates a lot of anxiety for me because I know I'm going to
So,
be in the mix somewhere. Um,
yeah.
and my
It's
wife
okay.
will
Let's
be
slow
helping.
down right there.
Okay.
Let's slow down right there. So, what I think I hear you saying is that holidays for you are really about the connection, about spending time with the people that you want to be around. So, it doesn't really matter to you where that is, what food, what clothes, what house, what paper plates look like.
Right.
It's really about the connection for you, right?
It is.
And so, when these holidays come up and there's all these expectations, it becomes something very different than just about the connection.
That's correct.
That makes sense.
I
Okay.
feel like
So I
it
just want to make sure.
becomes about everything but the connection
Mm,
because it seems to be a series of tasks.
mm.
Like on an Easter Sunday, people are probably, if you're going to have a gathering, people are probably prepping Friday and Saturday. And so it's not just a matter of, hey, we roll in, but, you know, my wife, which she is a saint in that she always loves to help. She loves to help set up. I think she understands the pressure of these kinds of events as a woman, wanting to put your best foot forward, wanting to have your house completely clean and set up for guests. And so she's very helpful in that way. And so typically when we go, we're going to be arriving a little early and probably helping out. And, sometimes I'm the helper, sometimes I'm the babysitter, sometimes I'm the gopher. Hey, we need this. Can you go to the store and get this? This past weekend, I was the onion chopper since I have a lot of culinary experience. Um, but
So what happens for you is it becomes more work and a lot of disconnect, which
correct,
is completely opposite of what you would like to do. And so no matter how hard you try over all these years, these moments are never about connecting. It's just about pressure and tasks.
correct. And
Yeah, that's a
trying
lot.
to, because when we go out of town to my wife's, it's like there's her mother, there's the grown kids, there's that side of the family's grandparents, there's her best friend who lives in the same area. And, sometimes we're trying to cram, we have to make all the stops. We have to see everybody because we're only down every couple of months. And, so a lot of times it feels like when a holiday should be about you're not working and relaxing, but sometimes during the holiday, I feel like I'm doing more work, more running because you're trying to see everybody in that area. You're trying to, um, you know, be helpful and all this stuff. But um,
I mean that
does
sounds
it,
very accurate,
yeah,
very spot on.
yeah,
So I
it's
mean it would make sense. And it sounds like, more of, and maybe this isn't the right word, let me know, but of a performance. Like you having to perform, put on, do all of these things that don't really resonate with you, but you're doing them because of the people that you care about.
correct. Yeah, I'm a t-shirt and shorts kind of guy. Um, Not a huge
I
fan of pictures or collared shirts, but I do it.
I think that this is a huge, huge topic and struggle for, I think, almost every relationship.
Yeah,
I don't know any couple, including myself, that doesn't struggle around this area.
it's a lot. And that's why I think it's a wonderful topic because, ideally, I think sometimes as men, um, maybe our wives don't understand that. Maybe it's never been voiced this way. Um, I'm sure I've voiced to my wife, like, well, I just feel like we have to make all these stops, we have to do all this stuff, but it doesn't really change anything because I still know it has to be done. And so I just do it. So there's no kind of validating of feelings or like, hey, I know you don't want to do this. I know you're doing it for me and I appreciate it. Um, if that makes
So,
sense.
yeah, I think that what I'm hearing you say is that you have to do it, or that's what has always been done. So that's what feels like always has to be the same. And even though you voice and you say, this doesn't really resonate, I don't like this, I don't want to do this, and you do it anyway out of love for your wife, it doesn't seem to really have an impact on her as far as gratitude in what you're actually doing for her. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think,
And I
you know,
think that this is huge because my husband and I struggle with the same thing. And, from the other perspective, right? And this is where I think we can offer the listeners some sort of navigation through it, because holidays are going to come and we have to do family events, and both sides are going to have to participate in things that don't really resonate, that we don't enjoy, and that are uncomfortable, right? From both sides, especially when we're talking about family and expectations and being around other family that is either judgmental or comparing. And that's what I found for me is like, I don't like being around people who compare me, or especially to other family members, or judge me. It's like I've worked so hard to get out of that. And
right.
so being around that is like, ugh. But
Well, and,
we
when
can't
you're,
just eliminate it.
yeah, but, also like my wife and I have been together for 18 years. And when you've been together with somebody so long and you've known a family that long, their family also sees these different iterations of you, some good, some bad, you know? We we have bad moments and over 18 years you're like, man, they've seen a lot of my bad moments. They've seen some good moments too. And so I think that's always a fear too of um hey, um are my in-laws seeing me on my good side? Do they see, if I was on the downswing, and if anybody listens to my podcast, you know that I was, but now I'm on the upswing. And, you know, do they, can they notice that? Do they appreciate that? Or do they just see, oh, this is the person who's still on the downswing? And, um, I don't know, but in a way, what someone else thinks of me is really none of my business. However, um, part of my nature as an empath, and as somebody who's received reward and praise for performance and pleasing, and because I love my wife, I want to please my wife. I want to please my in-laws, even if they don't think highly of me or something, you know? And
Right.
so that's a lot of pressure to feel. Um, Even though you feel like, I really shouldn't care. I just need to go there and be the best version of myself. But
Well, I think you said something really important that I think is a huge focal point, is connection with your partner. Because really that's what we can control, right? And we really just want to have our partner be safe in anything that we do, in everything that we do. And because we love them and we cherish them and we respect them and honor them, we want them to be happy. We want to make them proud, right? And so I think in this, even in those situations, even if other family members or in laws or friends judge us or don't approve or have really high expectations, if our partner is safe and is validating us, that's a game changer. And we can more easily say, it's okay, fuck it. We don't really care so much about what those other people think because the person that we care about most feels like they're on our side. They get us, they understand, right? So,
Right.
and I think that we can really focus on that because that is really what we have control over. And really, it's about that connection. And it's the most important connection really we have in our life is with ourself and our partner.
Agreed. Yeah,
And so in
go ahead.
those moments, you had said validation from your wife, right? And I think
Mhm.
that this is so important. It's really tough because honestly, people don't even know what the fuck validation is when we talk
I'm
about
learning. I'm
validation,
learning.
right? And really, in my opinion, validation is really hearing the other person without having to put your opinion in. It doesn't have anything to do with agreeing or disagreeing or enabling or anything like that. It is literally just listening and hearing the other person. And I think oftentimes that gets lost because fear creeps in. We get scared that if we validate that, then we're encouraging that behavior.
Makes
And
sense.
that is scary. It's so scary. Right. And so for me, with my husband in these, he absolutely hates holidays too. Right. So this is something that I'm learning, which is why I thought this episode was really beautiful, is because I'm also learning on the opposite side. I am a very positive, solution oriented pursuer,
Mhm.
and my husband is more of a glass half empty or all empty and a withdrawer. And so navigating that, because what has happened is, just as you have mentioned, that because we have different views on expectations and what's important and values, I have made him feel not seen, not valued, not appreciated, and unimportant, just like you're speaking of. And oftentimes women do that because we don't know. And men do the opposite. So what you're talking about is, you know, you don't want to go, usually you choose to work and or stay home,
Withdrawal.
withdraw. Exactly. And what happens is then we don't feel validated and we feel abandoned and then we feel unsafe and scared. And so then we get into this negative cycle. And if you see so often around these holidays, it is so disconnecting because at the end of it, in something that we started off as meant to be connecting, everyone is disconnected. And so many couples, so many partners, so many family members get into this negative cycle and they don't know how to get out of it. And I would say, really, first is understanding that validation, right? Like you said, I'll do this. I really want my wife to understand I absolutely hate this and I'm doing it because I love her. And we could go back and forth because usually what happens is then she'll say, "Well, I don't want you, this is what I would say.
Right.
I don't want you to just do it for me. I want you to do it because you want to do it, because you want to be around your family, because you want to spend time with us, right? I don't want to do this all alone. Why do I have to do all this work all alone? It's not fair. And so neither person feels validated. And then it just continues to build throughout the weekend or the day or the event. And by the end, everybody is extremely disconnected.
And exhausted
Yeah. And, and then,
emotionally.
right. Right.
Yeah. Well, I've really, in my journey of healing over the past 3 years and trying to become the better version of me, I've really tried to be in the moment and not be like, I do it just for my wife. You know, not this one, not this past one, but the year before, the Easter was awesome. We had a lot of fun playing games, and I made a real effort to want to enjoy myself, and connect. And I felt like we did, but this year it was a little different. Now there were some added stressors in that, my brother and sister-in-law, they hosted it. They moved houses and they had bought a new house. And of course, they want the new house for all the family to be perfect. And when we were setting that up, there was a little bickering between the brother-in-law and sister-in-law because, they're stressed out. They want, and I could see this. I could read the energy because I went in kind of with this, hey, I'm gonna enjoy this. We're gonna have a lot of fun. Um, and I might have even texted that or said that in one of our PCN meetings. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have fun because last year was so fun. But, when you go and the energy, the vibrations are automatically on this negative undertone of people bickering back and forth about what needs to be done. This doesn't work. Did you do this? Did you do that? Do we have this? That doesn't answer my question. Kind of stuff. And it's hard. And it kind of goes back to that thing of what you said, when another person feels bad, you want them to feel better because them feeling bad makes you feel bad. And so you really want yourself to feel better. And so when I would see like the bickering or the discomfort, um, little mini love spats that most couples have, when there's some pressure around, then I feel bad again and I want them to feel good. And is it because I want myself to feel good? In this instance, I don't think so. I think I want it to be, hey, like, let's not forget why we're here. Like, some of these things are really not that important. Like, and then kind of the way you get into this speak of, um, kind of, you know, military kitchen type things, barking orders, do this, do that. And I'm not real keen on that kind of stuff. I'm not keen on it from my wife. I'm not keen on it from a friend of hers. I'm not keen of it from a sister-in-law, a
So
brother-in-law,
so
because
there's a lot right there. So let's slow down because this happens so often, right?
Mhm.
And one of the big things that I think is so important for, the listeners to take away from this is how we navigate through this, understanding what the fuck is happening. And I think that when we can begin to understand what's happening, we better have a grasp on how to navigate through it, right? So you said a lot there. You had an expectation when you came. It's going to be about connection no matter what. So already you came in with an expectation. And these aren't bad. We're being aware, right? We're
I'm
looking
trying to
at all
be
of this
positive.
from a non-judgmental, right?
Right.
But right. And it's still an expectation. You want this to be positive and you want this to be about connection, right? And so you walk in and your brother and sister-in-law, they're already in their negative cycle because
Right.
he doesn't want to do all this shit probably, right? He's like, why are we doing this? We just spent a bunch of fucking money on this house and now we have to spend money hosting a fucking holiday.
He's like, I should have paid the lawn people extra to clean up all this shit.
Right, exactly. And so he's frustrated. He's like, this is so much, he's
Mm-hmm.
already where you were. He's like, I don't want to do this. And the wife is already with the expectations that wants it to be pretty because that is her programming and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the expectations that people have on her or that she has on herself, which are very normal and natural, but people don't recognize that this is even happening, right?
Right.
So being able to understand that. So they're already in their negative cycle. And so I would challenge you when you said that it isn't about you being making yourself feel better. When you said in this instant, usually when others are not okay, we want to make them okay so that we can be okay. And
Right.
you're like, well, I'm not really sure if that's true in this situation. So let's kind of unpack it a little bit and
Mm-hmm.
see if that's how you still feel. So you have this expectation that it's going to be positive and it's going to be about connection. You walk in and they're already in this negative cycle, right? And you and your wife are trying to not get into your negative cycle, right? So there's already pressure there because you don't want to disconnect. You don't want to disconnect from your wife and you don't want to be disconnected from your family. So you walk in and you're already disconnected. They're disconnected. And so you're like, okay, right? And you said what their expectations are doesn't resonate with you because of your own triggers. Your military, your chef, what they're doing and what's important to them is having an effect on you. And you don't want that feeling. You don't want to focus on that. So, what they're doing is affecting you. And this isn't bad. We all have this. And I think it's so important to really understand and recognize what is happening for us. So I would love to hear when you walked in and they're bickering, what was happening for you? What happened for you? Was there anxiety? Did you feel it in your chest? What happened for you?
Um, I was initially happy. And, you know, the brother-in-law's cleaning up, the sister-in-law's preparing to make gumbo, having a hard time cutting onions, which I eventually did. But, I was kind of making jokes and she was like, not having it. And I was like, well, I'm just in a good mood. So she's like, so you're just going to make fun all day? Like, as opposed to maybe contributing. I'm like, mm. So I ceased that and kind of went into helpful mode. But I automatically, in that instance, because they're not happy, I automatically took away my own happiness, my own giddiness, and didn't allow myself to be happy and actually brought my energy down to match theirs.
So in that moment when you tried to connect, and
Hmm.
this is huge, when you reached out, you were vulnerable and you reached out to connect, you were rejected. And so you withdrew,
Yep.
which makes sense. That makes sense. But so just recognizing what's happening, right? And in that moment, it makes sense to be hurt because you were rejected.
Well,
And
and
so, of
then,
course, your energy would change.
but then you turn into this kind of this old version of what we consider the male to be. Like, okay, you got rejected, just shut the fuck up and go do whatever it is they want you to do with your mouth closed and a smile. Because
Yes.
obviously, if you make any more jokes, if you try to be happy, if you try to connect again, try to lighten the situation, you're just gonna get kicked in the balls for it. So So then you kind of just, like a man, shut up, take it, suck it up, and just press forward. But you're
Yeah.
disconnected while you're doing that.
Right. And so this is where our partners come in. And this is why learning this, and I love helping women learn how to be safe for their husbands. And it's reciprocal, right?
Right.
The men also, our husbands also have to learn how to be safe for us. And most people have never fucking experienced what a safe connection is. We don't even know what that means. That was never modeled for us. We don't
I
see
didn't know
that anywhere.
till I joined the podcast connection network. I didn't know till I met you. I didn't even know
Yeah,
what holding space, safe connections meant.
right. It's because it's foreign. It's a foreign language. And so nobody's experienced that. So when I say safe connections, I mean people are seen, heard, and valued and physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually safe with that person. And it's okay that they're not okay, right? That's a lot. But to me, that's what love and safety, safe connections mean. And really, the key to a safe connection partnership is the ability to reconnect and repair, because we're all going to get disconnected. We're all going to fuck up and hurt one another and disappoint one another and get disconnected. But it's about being able to repair. And most of the times in relationships, like what you just said, I'm just going to shut the fuck up. Most men do that, right? Because they're like, nothing I say is getting me anywhere, just pissing people off. I'm already, I'm just going to obviously shut up,
Shut down.
shut down, withdraw. I'm not enough. Everything I do is a mistake. I'm just going to be quiet. And so it's when we have that, we're not able, okay, that is trying to remove the triggers. And women do the same thing. They withdraw. Most women pursue, they keep going, right? Which sends their husband into a further withdrawal, but that's a whole different topic. But what I'm trying to say is that we try to eliminate the triggers instead of reconnecting and repairing after they happen. And so in this situation, you're at your in laws, a safe connecting relationship would be like you being able to be vulnerable, going to your wife and saying, do you use her name on here or no? Okay.
Yeah.
So you go to your wife and you say, hey, right now I'm feeling really rejected. Like my feelings are really hurt. This just happened and my energy is gone and I'm pretty upset and it just sucks. Exactly what happened that I didn't want to happen happened, and I tried so hard and I'm really frustrated and kind of pissed off and I'm trying not to be in that funk and revert back to my old ways. That would be vulnerability, you going to your wife, right? And then in that moment, what she could do is validate, right? Normally, this doesn't happen because fear sinks in. She's like, you're going to withdraw. So she's like, don't withdraw from me. Just, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Just ignore it so that you stay present, right? Because that's our fear, is that um, you guys are going to leave us emotionally. And we actually do the opposite, because if we were to say something like, yeah, I could see how that would be super hurtful. And I know that you've been trying so hard to stay positive and just connect. And I know I see you trying to connect. And I know that's so important for you. And so it makes sense that that would be hurtful and you would be frustrated. You know, how could I be here for you right now? What do you need from me? I mean, how does that feel even in just saying that?
I like just hearing it and thinking if someone said that to me, like you could probably hear it in my voice. It almost like makes me tear up a little that somebody would even consider how I feel or think. Um, but the thing is I don't think my wife or the sister-in-law, like when I was making jokes and trying to be helping around, whether it was chopping this or chopping that, I don't know that they understood that what I was trying to do was connect so we can vibe, so I can help you so you don't feel so stressed out. I cooked for years and she couldn't cut the onions and my wife's like, Richard cooked for years. He's cut plenty of onions. He'll do it if your eyes are crying. And I did it and I chopped all the vegetables and whatnot and I was more than happy to do it. Um, but
So what would it look like if you said to your and all of this is really vulnerable, and I understand that. And most
mhm.
most men aren't just going to do this right off the bat, but I know that you've been doing some work, so I'm just going to throw it at you. What would it have been like if you when your sister-in-law said that to you and you looked at her and you said, "Hey, I'm just trying to connect with you. I want to help. I see that you're stressed out. I see that you're already frustrated and that you want to provide this beautiful meal and things aren't going the way that you already want them to. Hey, could I just give you a hug right now and just let you know that I appreciate you putting all this time and energy into hosting this for us?"
Probably sucked the wind right out of the sails and we'd have had a different conversation and probably a whole different weekend. And maybe even her and her husband would have had a different weekend.
Right? Because we all just want to be seen and heard, and none of us are doing that. Something is happening really big for everyone. And I think that
Agreed.
that's the huge thing, is that we forget to see and acknowledge that because we're so focused on, are we being seen? Right. And I do this too. And I'm speaking because I am super shitty at this with my husband. You can ask him. I am great with everybody else, but when it comes to my husband, because he is a withdrawer, I get scared to death and that fear kicks in. And I feel like I have to be like, no, be positive with me. Because if you're negative, then you're gonna leave, right? And it's subconscious. We don't even know. And so it's something that I am really, really having to work on. But I think the more that we talk about this, the more that we make it aware, is that it won't be a foreign concept, right? Even your brother-in-law, what it would have been like if you were like, you walked in and you saw that happening, you're like, "Hey, come here, dude." You pulled him outside and you're like, "I see you. I fucking get these holidays are insane. I see that you're trying to be there for your wife because you love her so much. I'm here. It's important for me to connect with you this weekend. And how could I do that? How could I be here for you?" None of us know what the other people fucking want because we don't talk about it. It's like this secret unknown of how we are there for one another. Just like you were saying, you don't even think that your sister-in-law and your wife even know that you were trying to connect. Like, these are conversations. And they don't happen because people can't be vulnerable because it's scary as fuck. Right? But we have to start somewhere. Somewhere, somebody has to be the example of what nobody's ever experienced. And you can't tell people. This is something people have to experience. Just like you experienced when I even spoke about the validation for you, or what it would be like if you validated your sister and you saw her,
Hmm.
or you and your wife before you even leave for the trip, any holiday. What if you guys sat down and you validated prior and talked about, "Hey, what is what is your expectation for this weekend? What does that look like? How can we do this dance together? How can I be here for you? How can you be here for me?" And this is going to take trial and error, right? Because so like with my husband, I found out we went through something and he tried to hold me and talk to me and I was like, "Please don't talk." And he got scared. He's like, "Shit, I said the wrong thing." And I was like, You didn't say anything wrong. I just recognize that in this moment, I don't want words. I just want you to hold me. And so getting to this place where we know what feels good for us and we can communicate that. So even prior for you guys leaving, like, hey, I know that it's so important for you to for us to see all these people and, see your family, and I get that, and I know it's so scary for you when I withdraw. And I know something really big happens for you when I emotionally leave you, and I don't want to do that. If you see that happening, can you let me know? Because sometimes I don't even recognize when that's happening.
You do it so often that it becomes a natural instinct. And
Yeah.
not only that, though, given my history, like my last job when I spoke up for myself, and they basically were like, you should be thankful you have a job. Fuck you and your raise, or what you think you should be getting. So you think about
Right.
that. The military has always been this kind of culture of push it down and do what you're told. And the same with the emergency room, but kind of the distinction I wanted to make, and this was something I thought about on the treadmill today, was the other reason I get so, I think one of the things that causes me the anxiety and frustration is, you know, and trauma feels different for everyone, but hosting this party might be traumatic to them. But like to me, when you bark orders at me, like this is not an emergency. This is not the ER. This is not the military. We're not being shot at. There's not somebody rolling in here on a stretcher, having chest compressions. So take it down a couple of notches and, you know, let's do this, but let's do it with a smile and not this kind of whatever it is, this friction.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that, hey, something happens for me when you speak to me that way, or I hear that being spoken to other people. It sends me back and it doesn't feel good. So I need you to stop doing that so that I can be okay, which is not bad. It's just recognizing, you know, uh, sounds like a lot like PTSD. And I think PTSD, people, are like, oh, it has to be from the military. It has to be from this. PTSD is just anything that brings you right back to a traumatic experience. And
Right.
traumatic experience can literally be anything that happens to you that feels traumatic. It changes your body, and your body remembers that on a subconscious level.
But the interesting thing is I perform so well under pressure and like in the ER and in kitchens where it's fast paced, and I don't mind the yelling actually. But it's kind of that's the environment because in those environments, food, um, healthcare, like emergencies, they need to happen fast. And so there's this is the way it needs to happen, and I don't take it personally. Um, because these are the circumstances, but when you get those outside circumstances, and I hate to say that, maybe they consider that an emergency. That's their form of trauma emergency, but it's not my form. My form is much higher, like seeing
Right.
people die, seeing holding somebody's leg after they hit a retaining wall on a motorcycle and they're going to surgery and I'm sending their leg to pathology. Those are emergencies.
Right. And I think that it just comes back to, like you said, trauma and catastrophizing things looks different for everyone. Right. And
Right.
so recognizing, because we can't change how somebody reacts or responds.
Right.
Right. But what we can do is recognize what's happening for that person. And you being so in tune, you recognizing that something really big is happening, like for your sister-in-law, right? And so
Hmm.
this is the change. So you recognize, okay, this is really big for her. I can't make her not feel big about this, but what
Right.
can I do? Is
Validate, offer to help.
validate. And this is where most people, helping is nice, right? It's that fix. But
Guilty.
most people just, well, and say me too. It's hard not to, right? And asking questions. Hey, I see something really big is happening for you. What's going on? Asking questions like, I want to be connected to you. Do you need help? Do you need a hug? Do you just need me to hear you? What do you need right now? Because we can use that fix it energy
Right.
just in a new way. Because really fixing, if you think about it, is staying connected. We have to fix it so that the other person can be okay, so that we can be okay, so we stay connected. So really, it's just about being connected. It's a new
Makes sense.
way of repairing, reconnecting, and staying connected.
Hmm. It's like I think about, for my family and just in general, I think people know me kind of as I would probably do anything for anyone. I'd give you the shirt off my back if you needed it. But when you think that it's yours, you expect me to give it to you, you say you're going to take it, then good fucking luck. Um,
Right. And that goes
that's the kind
back
of person
to,
I am. I don't like
well,
to be, but
and I
it's
mean, I
that
think that
withdrawal, like,
makes sense is honoring, right? Like,
right.
am I valuable to you? Do you value me? Do I feel valued by you? Do I matter to you?
Because I want to be a value add in every situation, be it a conversation, um, a place of employment, our podcast connection network. If there's something I can bring, I don't want to be dead weight, and that kind of comes back to the military, the kitchen. You're only as fast as your slowest person. And
Yeah, all of that is mixed in. And I think validating that for yourself and having these conversations with your wife, like all of these things to help your partner understand what is happening because it everything that happens to us happens for a reason. It makes sense. We just have to help one another make sense of what's happening so that in those moments they can be like, I think this is what's happening. Let me check in. And it's not about making them go away. I think on this like healing journey, people try to figure out how to make their triggers go away, how to make their trauma go away. And I
it ain't going
say
nowhere.
that's not fucking possible. Right? I think that you for sure lessen the hold that they have on you and you can have tools that help you recover and repair faster. But I think that also in the moments that we disconnect in our triggers, those are opportunities to reconnect. And that's where the magic happens. It's an opportunity to deepen those connections. There are moments to see one another.
Myself, probably a lot of people got a lot of work to do
Same.
as
It's something that I
spouses,
still
because I don't know about other men, but myself, I just I want my wife to be happy. I want my daughter to be happy. I want everybody around me to be happy and have a good time. And wherever, coming from so many team environments, whatever position I need to play, I'll play it. Um, because I look at the collective. Are we accomplishing the overall mission? And where do I fit best into that? But ultimately, for holidays and family time, um, events, I think that the connection is the overall goal. And if all this other stuff in between kind of can get in that, because there's these series that, up the mountain of disconnections, and it's harder to get reconnected when the energy's that way. Because, you could imagine, like, we went over there on Saturday to prep for Easter Sunday, and they were going to have to cook gumbo outside, and it started raining because I was actually outside journaling. And I go, oh, she's probably freaking out. And then the rain stopped. And, you know, we got over there, and I was like, I bet you were freaking out this morning. She's like, yep, I was. And, Sunday was a little better, but there was still some negative energy undertones, kind of like a little undercurrent. And I don't feel like I mean, I did connect it sometimes, but I don't feel like I stayed connected. Like the entire time, like I wanted to be, and really be in it and really enjoy, because, on my podcast, I talk a lot about chicken today, feathers tomorrow. Say what you want to say to the people you want to say it to, and enjoy it, because you just don't know. And so seizing those moments when we only get to go down there every few months or whatever it is, and they don't go how you want, or you don't feel as connected or as complete or um as fulfilled when you're driving away, then it kind of seems like a failure. And I don't like to fail. And then it's like, well, is it something I did? Did I disconnect? Was it the joke I made initially that disconnected the whole damn thing and never stayed connected? And, you know, and
Yeah,
then
it's a
that's a lot.
lot,
It is. And
right?
and 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 the other part is, and you can answer me this, but I kind of think of it like a mob mentality, in that, you know, I could clearly see, when we got out of the car and my sister-in-law had a certain energy, my wife automatically matched her energy. And so, later down the road, my wife and I end up in an argument over driving, over something completely stupid. And, you know, I'm like, is do women's energy rub off on each other if they're, you know what I'm saying? Kind of, do they jump on board? Like, if this is stressful for you, or you had something and you're like, man, fuck that guy, there, your friends gonna be like, well, fuck that guy.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a lot in that, right? So before we get to that question, I kind
Uh-huh.
of just wanted to talk about something that you said that I think is very common. Most men just want peace.
Correct.
They just want peace. However the fuck they can make that happen, they just want peace, right? Women want connection. They want adventure. They want to do all of these things. They want to stay connected, right? And so many things are happening for both people. So I just want to kind of reiterate that is that most men just want peace. However the fuck that they can get that, right? And so in those moments already, I think because of our programming and not being able to really understand and communicate, it already feels like a disconnect for women because they want so much for their men to be involved and want it as much as they do. Women, most women, not all, most women love doing the activities. it's fun. They love it, right? They love dressing up. They love buying the paper plates that men don't even give a fuck about, right? And so the women are like, be excited with me, want to dress up. And the men are like, be peaceful with me. How do we make this peaceful? And we're trying so hard for both people to make the other person do so that they can be okay and enjoy and stay connected. And it doesn't work. That's and that's like the negative cycle, which we keep getting into, right? So I think that that happens. And that underlying current that you were talking about that carried over on Sunday is because nobody was validated and everybody stayed in that negative cycle and they pushed down their feelings and everybody had to pretend and fake it from that point on.
Yeah, and I don't like that.
Right. Right. And nobody does, but
Doesn't
nobody
feel
knows how to get the
genuine.
fuck out of it.
Right.
Nobody knows how to get out of it. Right. Um, and so the other thing with that is this is why I am so passionate about helping and teaching others how to connect and have safe connections because it is selfish. I want to be around people who are safe for me. I want all of my family to learn all of this so that we can go to family functions and reconnect and repair. And so it's an expectation and a desire of mine that I have to watch very closely because it is a lot of work and not everybody is going to do that work. And so because people don't have this, they haven't experienced it. Fortunately and unfortunately, those that have experienced it and are understanding it and learning it are the only ones to give it and be it, to be that example. And it is a lot of work to be safe for other people who are not safe for us. It requires a lot of self love, having our own safe people, taking care of ourselves, validating, getting validated from ourselves and our safe people, and vulnerability because we're going to get rejected and rejected and rejected because those other people do not understand and they cannot give something they've never experienced and that they don't have. And so knowing and choosing who you're going to do that for, knowing that it's going to be a lot of work and it's a lot of energy, and not having that expectation of reciprocating it, maybe ever, but in the hopes that maybe one day you will get it back from them and that they will understand, but they won't if if they never experience it. And unfortunately, because it's tough, part of that goes into holding space and allowing them to not be okay
Right.
over and over and over. That validation, that non judgment, letting go of expectations, year after year of validating your family. And maybe one day they'll experience it and they'll feel that shift like you have.
You know, I look back on it and in my efforts to try to be everything that I think everyone wants me to be, I didn't spend much time on my phone. And part of me is like, if I didn't feel like there were safe people, like maybe I should have reached out to you, Hunter, somebody who I feel safe with, who has a way of explaining that to just go, look, maybe they just need a validation. And maybe I could have done that then on Saturday. And maybe Sunday would have been a barn burner as opposed to just, I mean, it was good. It wasn't bad. It didn't have the same energy as the year before. There weren't quite the number of smiles that there were the year before. And
Yeah.
if any of them listen to this, you may disagree, but I know I was there. I'm super in tune to me, but I'm also super in tune to what's going on around me
Well, and I think
because of that.
the underlying is the disconnect.
Right.
And you really, really felt the disconnect between you and others and between others.
And
And
themselves.
just, yeah, exactly. Right. And the more that you learn about this, the more that you see it, the more that you experience safe connections and validation, the more you're going to be drawn to that. And the more you're not going to, the more you're going to be sensitive to not receiving that. It's going to stand out even 10 times because you're like, hold on, wait a second. Especially like, at PCN, the Podcast Connection Network, we have formulated a group of
Mhm.
very safe people who do validate and honor and hold space, which is very sacred. And this is a lot of our missions is to be that and help people experience that. And so when you experience it on a day-to-day basis, it becomes your new norm. And then the outside world is now almost foreign and it feels very, very different and very, very sensitive to that. You're like, wait, let's go back to that safe. And
Right.
and what I loved what you said is having safe people, whether that's friends, whether that's a therapist, a counselor, a coach, your spouse, finding and creating a safe connection so that you have a lifeline. We don't have to do this alone.
It's almost like an alcoholic having a sponsor when they get in tough
Yeah,
times.
exactly. And we all, in my opinion, I'm a coach. I am a I counsel, and I will always have a counselor. I will always have a coach. I will always have a mentor. And that goes into another stigma of needing help, right? And
Mhm.
especially for men, that can also feel really vulnerable. So a lot of what I'm talking about today, I fully understand that this is a concept that is foreign and does not feel safe, which I fully understand. So, on my part, I am helping women learn how to be safe for you
Mhm.
guys, for you men. Don't worry. Um, but when you men are vulnerable for your partner, it draws them in. And it's this very funny thing that when you're vulnerable, it actually softens, right? And then we can get into the whole divine masculine, divine feminine. In this society, most of us women have had to sit in our masculine energy. And this changes the dynamic of our relationships because then we're almost competing with our men for that masculinity. But what women need is for their men to be in their divine masculinity so that we can pull back and be in our divine feminine.
And what does
And
divine masculinity look like?
well, we could Google it, but they're for the simple,
Mhm.
in my opinion, for this conversation, we view men as being strong and fighting and not talking and just not crying and handling it all and just shoving it down and keep going, right? Actually, divine masculine is very in tune, very vulnerable. This does not make him weak. He's actually much stronger because he is in tune with vulnerable parts of him. And so this does not mean that he can't fight. He can't protect. He isn't strong. It just means that he has the ability to know when to use that and when to be vulnerable. So divine masculine and divine feminine are when each are sitting in both their masculine and feminine, because we both male and female have masculine and feminine energy, but it's when we reside more on one, when we pull that pendulum back, right? And so most women, for me even, it has taken me so long and I still struggle with it. I sit in my masculine because I have had to protect myself. I haven't had safe, especially safe male connections, right? So I have had to protect. I have had to do all of the things. I have had to be strong. I have had to work, right? I have not been able to really sit in that vulnerability, that care, being taken care of. We've always had to take care of. So the divine is when we are, I don't like the word balance because we're never really balanced, but when we possess a good amount of both of those energies within us so that we know how and when to tap into those energies. Does that make sense?
It does. And it was interesting that, I'm in tune enough to know, like I said, when my wife and I got in the argument over driving, I didn't say a lot and I kind of cold shouldered her, which not like intentionally, but it's like if you can't say something nice, don't say anything. But also, like, I was afraid just create an argument that would never end because it only took a little back and forth of the argument for me at some point by the end of the ride to go, it's not about what lane I chose or when I chose to turn. And until I could kind of sit on that, because I was like, I need to make sure why I'm really upset and also, try to see why she's upset. And then, in thinking about it, I really couldn't pull her perspective, but I was like, I felt like we've been together 18 years. I've flown you to San Francisco, Chicago, driven from Chicago to Sheboygan, Michigan. We've been to Myrtle Beach, Georgia, Florida, everywhere. Like, I felt like you don't trust me to get us, you know, 10 miles down the road, um, after all this. And that's the way it felt to me. Now, it's probably not true at all. Um, but I did understand at some point that, sometimes the argument is not the argument. It's about something deeper. And, for me, I felt like, oh, my wife doesn't trust me to drive her and my daughter because, and I told her, I go, just because I made a decision that you wouldn't make doesn't mean it's a wrong or bad decision. You know, you're
Right.
not required to chime in on this because you're in the passenger side on your phone. Like, if you want to drive, drive. And it starts this, it's
Negative cycle.
horrible. Yes.
And so again, in those moments, recognizing what's happening, right? Because
Hmm.
that's all we can do to get out of the negative cycle. That's the first thing we can do is recognizing something just happened here.
You're on a merry-go-round.
Something just happened here. And something happened for her and something happened for me. You know, what happened for me? And correct me if I'm wrong. I think I hear you got triggered. You felt defensive. You felt attacked. You felt untrusted, unvalued, unrespected,
Yep.
misunderstood. So all of
All
that happened for you, right? Is that close?
it is. And I withdrew.
And you withdrew, right? So recognizing that that happened for you, right? And then getting curious, turning to her, you know, I something just happened for you. What happened? And oftentimes also understanding our partner and what they've been through. Trauma holds in our body, right? The body keeps the score.
Have it
Great
on
book.
Audible.
Yes, I've listened to it several times. The body keeps the score, and that lives on a subconscious level, right? So knowing things about our partner can help us understand when these things arise because oftentimes they have no fucking clue what even happened for themselves,
Right.
right? So, you know, has my wife been in a car accident? Has she had trauma in the car? Asking those questions to
And she
myself,
did. Had her mouth
And
wired shut from a rollover.
And so understanding that, immediately you can go, I wonder if this is a trigger and her body is trying to tell her, hey, I got to keep safe. Because correct me if I'm wrong, maybe something happened. Like you said, you got into a different lane and she's like, why are you doing that? What's happening? Right.
Mhm.
This really big, like you said, this is not an emergency. Why are you freaking the fuck out?
I go, why are you starting shit with me over this?
Right. And for her and her body, I mean, she's not here, so
Right.
I could only guess and speculate that
Pontificate.
this, yeah, that, her body's like, oh shit, I'm in a car. Something felt off. Something looked scary. What's happening? We got to keep us safe. And for her, that was an emergency because she's like, I don't fucking, and this is not conscious, but her body's like, we don't want to be in another car accident. That was terrible. That was traumatic. I don't ever want to fucking experience that. And so in that, she's like, keep me safe. Whatever's happening, what are you doing? You have to keep me safe. This is an emergency. And this is where so many things happen because a lot of times when you hear people say, like, they freak the fuck out for no reason.
There's a
There is
reason.
no, exactly. There is no reason. There's always a reason behind when somebody freaks out. We just have to figure it out. We just have to understand. So, knowing that about your wife, right? Knowing even now that this probably affects her body before she ever even gets in the car, that her body is already in
On guard.
protection mode. Exactly. So, in that moment, now knowing this about your wife, what would it have looked like if she was like, whoa, what happened? Why did you switch lanes? And recognizing, hey, something big is happening for her. I did get triggered. I feel this. This makes sense because of my own experience and maybe where that comes from. Understanding where your not enoughness, where what happens for you comes up, right? And that is important and valid because something big does happen for you also. But right now we're kind of just
Right.
focusing on what happening with your wife and turning to her and say, or don't turn because you're driving, just talk and say, hey, I see something really big happen for you. Like, what's going on? And she may not even know. And you can even help her understand, like, hey, does being in the car give you anxiety at all? Did something come up for you? Get curious
Yeah.
because help her also understand what's happening for her. Help her make sense of it because it might be just as fucking frustrating for her. She's like, I don't know why I freaked out. I just freaked out. Okay. Like, get off my case. Like,
Right.
just drive
We
proper.
just stopped talking once we couldn't stop arguing.
Right. Because it's trying to get the other person to understand and see what's happening to us when we don't even know what the fuck is happening to ourselves.
Right.
And that negative cycle, right? So stopping that negative cycle and just saying, hey, I see something big happen for you. Like it would make so much sense that you would have that reaction based on what you've experienced. Wow.
Man. So weird. Like I have anxiety just reliving it all because I'm like, oh, if only, I mean, I know I'm more in tune with myself because I was able to recognize it wasn't about the turn, it wasn't about the lane. But like for me as a man and a husband, the part where I can do better and kind of failed, and mostly because I don't know, is to recognize that yes, it wasn't about the lane, but maybe it wasn't about me, and maybe it's not that she doesn't trust me. It's something with her that I'm not attuned to, that I'm not tuning into, that I'm not asking the right questions. And, you know,
So, like these missed moments of opportunity.
yeah, because I
So,
want to be the best I can be. I mean, I've done a lot of work on myself to be the best version of myself for me, for my wife, for my family, my daughter. Um, and
What if I told
so
you there is an opportunity to reclaim those moments?
I'll take them.
And so most people feel silly, but this shit works. They're called redos. Take your wife, go sit back in the car. It may feel silly. Try it. Just say, hey, I just want to try something. Do this with me. Go back into the car. Say, hey, can you tell me, something close to what you said? Like,
Mhm.
re-say
Um,
that. Like, ask her to re-say what she said. Like, why the fuck did you get in that lane?
yeah. Why did you get in that lane? And I go, well, because I thought
Right.
that
But this
Diesel
is
was going to stay in that lane.
right. But this is your opportunity for a redo. So when she says, why'd you get in that lane?
Hey,
And because you're not driving,
mhm.
you can actually take this moment on a deeper level. You can turn to her, even grab her hand, look her in the eyes, and say, hey, I see that you're really scared right now. And that makes so much sense what you've been through. And I really want to be safe for you. I just want to let you know that I see you in this moment.
Is being scared come off is angry sometimes, masked.
100%. Because scared is vulnerable. And if it's not safe to be vulnerable, you're getting anger.
Because, it's one of those things of being able to ask the other person, like, do they even understand? Like, no, I'm not scared. I'm angry that you did this, that you chose the wrong lane. Will they
Well,
pick
right,
up on
because
that they're scared?
um and if she says, I wasn't scared, I was pissed off. And you say, I see that you're really angry that I chose a different lane and something happened for you. And you can get curious. You can say, you know, why did that affect you? And in the beginning, people don't know, right? She could say, I don't know. It just did. And you can validate that, right? You can get curious too and say, when I switched lanes, where did you feel that in your body? How did you know that I switched lanes? What happened? Because most people are not in tune with their body. So not only are you helping her make sense of what's happening for her, you're understanding her better.
Feel like it had to be the body because she looked up from her phone to notice
Right.
what
But
I did.
it happens so
Yeah,
fast,
it did.
right? It happens so fast that when you're not really in tune, it takes practice. It's like building a muscle
Right.
to even recognize that it's happening, right? And so that's also what we can offer people is being that example. Like, man, when you said, hey, change lanes, something big happened for me. I felt it in my shoulders. I felt it in my jaw. I felt it in my chest. I felt the heat starting to rise from my stomach, right? And so you being that example, and it's dual. It helps you connect with your body and know what the fuck is happening to you. And then it also helps other people understand what's happening to them. Like even in this conversation, I feel it in my chest,
I
right?
feel it.
The
Yep,
anxiety,
right there.
right? Because we're being in that situation. I've been where your wife is, and I'm like, what are you doing? And my husband knows because I've been in car accidents since I was little. And so I literally will slam on my passenger brake with my hand on the dashboard, right? And I will try to step on the pedal that I don't have on the passenger side because we've been in so many rear ends. Right.
Wow.
And so that's happening for me. I'm experiencing this for myself as we're talking about this. And I feel it in my chest. I feel being in that car. I feel being disconnected from my husband when he doesn't before he didn't understand what was happening to me.
You know what I feel? I feel, but it's a good nervousness, almost like when you, back in the day, you want to go ask a girl out, you get nervous. But I think I feel nervous. The anxiety is wanting to be better, wanting to do better, and next time something like this happens, I get a chance to respond appropriately or better than I did, and hopefully make her feel safe and validated and um, strengthen our connection versus, spending our 18-year anniversary not really talking to each other on a ride
Right.
home. I don't
Yeah.
want that.
Reconnecting and repairing. Even I want to leave the listeners with hope that we don't also have to wait. And I think so many times we feel like we have to wait. Like even with your brother and sister-in-law, you could message or text them and say, "Hey, it felt really disconnected." And that doesn't sit well with me. And I could see that this weekend was really tough.
It was
You can go back and validate and you can reconnect, repair.
a lot of
We
work to
don't
do.
have to wait. That's like what you said is don't wait for tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Is we don't have to wait for those opportunities. I love redos. I use them all the time. And they sound silly and they sound like they won't work. I guarantee you, try it. Even just having this conversation,
Right.
it's felt validating, right?
Yes.
And and so imagine having that with the person that you're disconnected from.
Podcast that turned into a therapy session for the listeners, but that's okay. I'm willing to, you know, the idea of the podcast, the discussion is it's not just for me. Or when I talk to other people, many times I'm reminding myself of what I need to do, who I need to be. So it's not just for the listeners. So hopefully the listeners get something out of this and the therapy session just wasn't for me,
I mean, I
but
got
it's
something
okay
out
if it
of it.
was. Because ideally you know, we want people to really be in tune with themselves and understand that many times what you think is the issue is not the issue, but really getting to that root cause and figuring out how we can, let's try some things. Let's try some solutions, some validating, some reconnecting, and see, see where it goes. Let's try it. And because the idea is to grow closer, not further
Right, that
apart.
connection.
Yeah. And,
Right. And
it's like 18 years of being with someone, like you would think you would figure it out. But we go through so many different iterations of ourselves, kind of like I said before. Um, and, we do better once we know better. But it's part of I think it's part of the fun, um, is the process. And even to think, um, to go, hey, this might make us closer than we've ever been. you know, as opposed to, because typically we tend to argue with the people we're closest to, we love the most. I don't know why, but we just do.
Well, because we can be the most vulnerable with them
Makes sense.
and they get to see our raw, right? And like you're talking about, unfortunately, because we're not really connected to ourselves and we get caught in a negative cycle, is that they see anger versus sadness. And so when we can understand, like you said, the root of, am I angry or am I sad? And so much of it comes down to abandonment. We don't want to be alone. We feel too much or not enough. And if we feel those, and if we are those, the people that we love and we need are going to leave us.
Hmm. A lot to think about, a lot to digest, a lot to process, a lot to put into action because that's the most important part, obviously. But, I thank you for being here. Thank you for your point of view, for, speaking. Like I said, this was an important topic for me, an important conversation to have. And the reason I wanted you here was because I want to see both sides. I want to know how I can be better, how I can do better, and I don't want to come off looking like a douchebag to everyone. But this is really a journey about getting better, about improving, about strengthening, repairing, making stronger
Connection.
connections. Yeah. And so I appreciate you, and I hope the audience, the listeners, enjoy it, get something out of it, and put something into practice. And on that note, too, they can visit the Podcast Connection Network landing page. It has all the podcasts in there, which is the Men of the House podcast. That's me. We got Connection Over Perfection with Amber, who's in the interview. We have Hot Mess Espresso with Heather Harrington, Magic and Metamorphosis with Amanda Hope, and The Nonchalant Perfectionist with Ethan R. Gibson, who also has a book on Amazon. And everything is connected with Hunter Allen. But if you go to that page, you'll see a little bit about all of us, but you're also going to find a place to listen to each of our podcasts, but also some resources. And if you like what you heard in this discussion, um, you liked Amber's point of view, go over and check out her resources. She has a lot of things she can offer. She offers counseling sessions. She offers nutritional advice and help. And, I just, man or woman, you know, go out there and, try to be the best version of yourself and go out and be the person you would want to meet.
Yes,
What do you
thank
think?
you. And if yeah, that was great. If I could just leave with one thing, and
Yes.
you can either add it in or not, is that I think it's so important that it's not about what's wrong with us. It's about what happened to us. And if we can come off with that intention and knowing that there's nothing wrong with us. And oftentimes we ask, what's wrong with us? Why can't we get this? What's wrong with them? And it's not what's wrong with them or what's wrong with us. It's about what happened to us.
That makes so much sense when you say that because the next morning after the whole event, got up and I said I might go to the Waffle House, and my wife, and I was getting something out of the fridge, and she's like, "I thought you were going to the Waffle House." And
One
I
second, okay, but I'm almost done.
I still
You can
hadn't
come in just
healed, and I was like, "What did I say?" No, blah 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 blah. She goes, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with
mm,
you?" We do that so instinctually. What's wrong with you? You said this, now you don't want to. You wanted ice cream earlier, now you don't. What's wrong with you? But it makes so much more sense to go, what happened to you? Because if I was standing at the fridge and she said, what happened to you as opposed to what's wrong with you? Because typically, if you ask what's wrong with me, I'm going to tell you nothing, even if there is something wrong. But if you said what happened to me, say, do you remember that little argument we got into last night? Well, I'm still feeling that because I don't think it was about that. And I don't think we're in the place we should be, you know? So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. And if we get curious too, that's where that curiosity comes in, right? And there's also a book. I learned so much. Uh Whatever you think about her, but Oprah Winfrey and a neuroscientist. And the book is about what happened to you because it's helping everybody make sense of what happened to us versus what's wrong with us.
Right.
Let's go. Asteroid of fear.